That's what I call a tough flashlight. Heavy downpours, mud puddles, even extreme temperatures are no match. You could spend over $100, or the Atomic Beam USA can be yours for just $19.99 with free lifetime guarantee. Order now, you can double it and get a second Atomic Beam USA. Just pay a separate fee, and we'll even ship them to you for free. Atomic Beam USA is just $19.99. Order now.
Call 1-800-638-2619 to get your Atomic Beam USA. Call now or go to atomicbeam.com. So call 1-800-638-2619. Deluxe version available. Order now.
Have you been denied credit or hit with high interest rates? A low credit score happens to many of us, and millions of people are victims of incorrect items on their credit reports and don't even know it. That's why you need credit repair now. Our proven process has resulted in past clients seeing on average 11 negative items removed from their credit report and a 40-point increase after the first 4 months in our program. Call now and request your credit report and credit score for free in minutes.
Call 1-800-783-9197.
3, 2, 1.
You're listening to 910 AM Superstation. You're listening to 910 AM Superstation.
The best in the city.
The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. WFDF Farmington Hills, Detroit. 910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media.
And good morning. My name is Robert Ficano. You're listening to 910 AM, the Superstation. And we got a lively program for you here today. We have Police Commissioner Willie Burton.
Good morning, Bob. How you feeling?
Great. How about you?
Man, I haven't had my coffee, but I see you got you a cup right here. So,
hey, man, you got to learn the priorities here. All right. And Scotty Boman, our resident Libertarian here.
Good morning.
How you doing? You know, there's been a lot in the news. We got some program, though. We got George Hunter that will be coming on, Detroit News reporter. Also, we're going to touch on some civil forfeiture here this morning about there's been some bills that have been introduced and what's going to be involved in that. If you want to join us eventually in the conversation here, you can at 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. And, Scotty, before we get into it a little bit, I know that you always advocate for third parties and independent third parties and things such as that. What do you think of what's going on nationally here? That is Starbucks going to be the new third party here of the national campaign?
Well, it's really an independent effort by one person. And so I don't really see it as growing into a third party. I know we had probably one of the largest runs against the major parties in my memory would have been Ross Perot. And in some states, he did go for creating another party, the Reform Party. But after the next election cycle, it pretty much just fell off the map, and not much really happened with it. So,
well, the former CEO of Starbucks is looking like he wants to have an independent run, but is all he going to do is help the Republicans? And the polling they've done for whatever good the polling is now, because it's just a temporary snapshot, is that he will help Trump get reelected, which he says he does not want to do. He doesn't want to help Trump. He doesn't want to do any of that. But at the same time, him running, you know, it's almost impossible sometimes to get on. If you want to be an independent, you have to actually know the laws in all 50 states in order to get on the ballot, which makes it really hard. You don't automatically get on as a Democrat or as a Republican. In fact, that's why Bernie is running as a Democrat, because he couldn't probably get through the effort to be an independent through all 50 states. He still hasn't joined the Democratic Party, which is something that bothers me. But he wants the nomination, but he won't even pay the $10 to become a Democratic Party member. But
hey, don't be picking on Bernie.
Oh, okay. I forgot. Are you a libertarian here? Progressive far left? Anyway, so what do you think the odds are? I mean, all he's really going to do is serve as a spoiler, isn't he?
well, I just wanted to address one thing beforehand. If in his defense, saying that polling indicates he would help Trump, you could argue that the Democratic challenger to Trump is helping Trump. Otherwise, perhaps this guy from Starbucks might be able to beat him.
How's the Democrat helping Trump?
Well, because he's taking votes away from people who would otherwise, if there were no Democrat on the ballot, possibly vote for this guy.
Oh, okay. That's sort of far-fetched. All right. I got you. If you want to join us at 313-778-7600.
9:10 a.m. on the Robert Ficano show. Politics is always cooking.
Yeah, it is, one way or another. We want to talk a little bit about civil forfeiture. And, Willie, why don't you give us a little background on that? I mean, as sheriff, I understood what civil forfeiture was all about. It has definitely taken, for lack of a better word, an ugly turn in a way that people perceive civil forfeiture, what it does, and things such as that.
It's interesting, about civil forfeiture is that, Detroiters are having a really hard time, and just, families in Michigan is having a hard time, when their possessions, are taken away and they get exonerated or dismissal and don't get their items back. I mean, under this, civil forfeiture law, I mean, hey, law enforcement, agencies can actually keep your property. So with the Police Board of Commissioners, we just passed something on civil forfeiture in 2017. But now with the new state law, looking at what's about to take place with the state Senate sending it down to the House, Detroit Board of Police Commissioners definitely has to make sure that
for the people, Willie, that don't understand the way civil forfeiture works, it sort of reverses the burden of proof, and it allows the police officers, if you're suspected of a crime. A lot of it, many times, is in narcotics. Let's say you're driving, and they find or they're suspicious of narcotics being in the car, and they find something. They automatically seize the vehicle as part of the transporting of the drug. Or if you have a house and things like that, they can go in and they can seize it. And many times, the law enforcement doesn't even bring a criminal case. They automatically seize the asset. You can... In certain circumstances, you can get it back for I forget what the amounts are now. When I was sheriff, it was like $300, $500, $1,000. Then they would auction it, or they can auction it off, and they get the money. And it becomes sort of like another rail of tax on people, because many times the law enforcement won't bring a criminal case against you, and they automatically get the asset, or they get your car, they get the house. And it goes through a civil procedure. And what is unusual is that in most of the time, any type of government seizure of anything, the burden's on the government to prove what they're doing, why they're doing it. It reverses the burden. If they seize the asset, if I'm the individual, I have to show you why, I wasn't involved in the crime, or why I should get the asset back, and things like that. It completely reverses the burden. It's counterintuitive to how the statute is supposed to be set up.
Bob, you are absolutely right. And, just recently, the Board of Police Commissioners, we approved an economic hardship for those individuals that get their car towed. But one of the things that I didn't like in that the whole piece that we approved, it was they have 5 or 7 days, to fight to get their properties. But it didn't have anything in that package, that the board approved to protect those that, get their items, seized or something for civil forfeiture. So now I'm looking to help those families or those victims, by taking it from 5 or 7 days to 30 days. Because, we're starting to see a lot of families in the city of Detroit are really hurting by the Michigan civil forfeiture law.
And one of the now the legislature is starting to pass laws trying to reverse this. And there's been a new one introduced. There are some new ones also about trying to stop, the presumption that the law enforcement or the government was correct in seizing. And you can't seize anything, or the government can't take title to it, until there's actually a criminal conviction.
Right, and I was looking at that law, which was what happened is on Wednesday the Senate, I guess, voted on it and approved it, but it didn't become official and get sent on to the state House until Friday. But it passed with a vote of 36-2, which is virtually unanimous.
I wonder who the two were that went.
Oh yeah, they listed them in an article, and some guy from Warren and from some other further away place. But it was effectively they're just the outliers. And there's a couple House bills, HB 4001 and 4002, are similar and sitting in the State House right now. Dana Nessel, who's Attorney General, is for this, and she had introduced similar legislation back when she was part of the legislature. The bill in the Senate was actually introduced by Republican Peter DeLaCito. So both of the major parties in the legislature are supporting this, as well as our Attorney General.
Yeah, I understand the governor's in support of revising this and changing the law as well. So the Republican is actually from Macomb County, so it looks like there's a pretty broad support in trying to change this. LaCito's from Macomb.
Yes. Bob, I like to hear from some of the callers. I like for them to call in. If you has been a victim and your items has been seized, being suspected of a crime, and then later kept, it doesn't give anybody the right to keep your property. This is something that you work for.
What it's turned into is that it's becoming a revenue stream for the law enforcement, good or bad. You depend on a certain amount of money coming in from the auctions and things like that. Number one, because the funding isn't there from the local municipality and things like that, so they're looking at other means. You see that like with tickets. I mean, part of sometimes all you got to do is drive through the suburbs and look at what is usually the nicest building in the suburb. It's usually the courthouse. That's because the tickets have helped build that, so it's a difference. Here, we got some callers on. Hi, Fidel, you're on with Bob Ficano and with the Commissioner and with Scotty Boman.
Good morning. One of you gentlemen says it's a law. Can you guys give me the law? What's the law?
There's a statute. There's a statute and the case law.
Actually, well, I mean, if you want, I got to have them in front of me. You're asking about the bill or the law that currently is on the books?
Be honest with you, sir. If you got time, I would like to hear both of them. And before you can get that out, just not being an angry man, this is why the general public does not like the police. I mean, when the average black person see a police, everything is negative. You got to say, at least I'm going to get a ticket. I might go to jail. Now they're confiscating my vehicle over in high insurance. I mean, when I first started driving, I got my permit around, 86, 87. The cops will pull me over. I didn't have no insurance, couldn't afford it. They would give you a pass. You ain't doing nothing wrong.
You know it.
Your car. I thought they could take your car if you so-called committing a crime.
Is it Fidel?
Yeah,
yes,
Fidel.
Fidel, you're absolutely right. And, I hear this all the time, talking to constituents. And, one of the things that the Board of Police Commissioners, we approve the economic hardships for those who had their cars, taken away or repossessed for whatever reason. But I didn't like how they put in there 5 to 7 days till you will be able to appeal it. So I want to throw something out there, and I'm looking to do this in an upcoming week, and I'm working on that same proposal, adding, some new things to it, and that's to the 30 days, because they ask for a lot of information for you to do your appeal in 5 or 7 days. We need 30 days for Detroiters and for those, has been affected and have their things taken away. What happens if you still going through the legal process?
Exactly. So
I fight for you guys.
Right. We saying the same thing. We just saying it different. They know that you fighting the legal process. They say every day on almost all these shows that come on 910, most Detroiters are supposed to be dumb, uneducated. But you expect for them to get something as major as this done in 7 days? Come on now. Plus, let's do the flip side of this, gentlemen.
That's what the Board of Police Commissioners policy that they approve. But
I got you.
I'm fighting for you guys so we can get 30 days for you guys. Because even if you get a parking ticket, you got 14 days to challenge that through the court.
Exactly. Now, let's do the flip side. There has been, throughout the history, there has been a few Detroit police officers, Highland Park, and the other city. They got caught up in swindling drugs patting down people taking the drugs. One cop went down to the hospital and got set up. Now, why don't the police department give back to the community when they people do wrong? There's no law on the books when they out here killing. When they get
no. They can be charged. They get charged criminally. A police officer,
Yes.
if they break the law, they get charged criminally like anybody else.
But the community does not give back. Who do you think gets something like the frat rat? Do you think the community getting their cars and their property took, or the police department?
Well, no. If a police officer is using a scout car and he does an illegal transaction, the government is not going to seize its own car. Okay,
Exactly. I said give back to the community. You have to give back. If you want people to say that they so polite, innocent, doing their job, if they unsensitive to what's going on out here, then I have to be sensitive to, I don't care. It got to be 50-50. If the law is against me when I do wrong, the law should be against them when they do wrong.
How would you feel, perhaps maybe of instead of them having to give back, that they stop taking? For instance, there was a case in 2008 where you had 130 people went to this art gathering, and 40 cars were seized from the parking lot because it turned out that the people running the art opening didn't have the proper licensing, a cabaret license or whatever, in order to serve drinks there. But the people attending didn't know that. They're just going to an art opening, and suddenly they're all getting their cars taken away.
Where was this?
And
What
under
city
civil
was this?
forfeiture.
What city was this? You know?
Detroit.
Really?
And under civil
Well, you don't have
forfeiture,
to.
they
Now,
didn't
was it
have to
a
prove
blind
these
pig?
people
Was
did
it a
anything
blind
wrong.
pig? Was it a blind pig?
I think they categorized it that way, but it was an art opening. They were out in the open. They weren't hiding what they were doing. They were just having an art opening, and they were serving drinks at the art opening.
Okay. I mean, the thing you got. No. The thing you got to be aware of, if it was after 2 a.m. in the morning and they're serving drinks, it's a blind pig, basically, is what they're doing. I mean, they're running illegal activity, which subjects it to some of the forfeiture. I mean, most people are aware that if you go to a location and they're serving drinks that they're not supposed to, that's not legal. You're not supposed to do that.
Well, it says here it happened shortly after 2 a.m., which means, like, for instance, if you're at a bar and last call passes, they let you hang out at the bar a little bit
drink, yeah.
after 2.
But if they're serving drinks after 2, and if it's supposed to go till, a lot of those blind pigs go till 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, so you're way beyond the 2 o'clock.
Right, but that isn't when they did it. They just did it right after 2, and the people were already there.
Yeah.
Ferdell,
Okay, can you guys let me know when the next police mission board meeting is?
Sure, when is it, Willie?
I'll be there too.
Absolutely. We meet every Thursday at 3 o'clock at 1301 3rd Street. That's the new police headquarters. It says DPSH on the outside of the building.
It's right by the casino, right?
It used to be the old MGM.
Yeah.
Yep, by the casino. All right, thank you, Mr.
All right, thanks, Fidel. Thanks, Rick.
And I just want Fidel and for the rest of the callers, I want you all to know that I fight for you guys at the Border Police Commissioners at the table. For those that may have their property and things taken. So I'm looking to put something new into the policy to protect you guys. Because we want to hear from you. So I'm taking that 5 to 7 days with the policy status right now. For those who get their vehicles, repossessed, to put in 30 days, give you 30 days to try and get your items back, because a lot of times things are still going through the court system.
Well, you raise a good point that if you get a ticket, you got 14 days whether you want to respond and how. So, Rick, you're on with Bob Ficano with the Commissioner and with Scotty Boman.
Hey, good morning to you guys. You brought up across the board some issues, too, I've been looking at. I like to see the new changes. I don't think it goes far enough. I think part of what is missing, because this has went on for a long time, decades, and one of the reasons I think on the forfeiture piece that people let it go, I know in the cases that I have first-party, knowledge of, is it does away with a crime usually, or your part in a crime. Who cares about, $10, $20, $100,000 if you're going to avoid being charged for something they're also alleging in the complaint. And so, I understand that. It went on too long. But mainly to the point here is a lot of times when we do this stuff, we don't really offer, should I say, a part to organizing in all of this. You know, when people are coming and they have a complaint, if you just take the complaint and you bury the complaint in your office, that doesn't help organizing. We need to look.
It doesn't, Rick. But under the new law, the police can't even. They can't seize the asset without a criminal complaint and without an eventual conviction of the criminal complaint.
Oh, now that part is good, but I'm looking at it more now from the handler standpoint who gets this, because that's where it comes from, right? The people who take the complaints from the people who have their stuff forfeited. That's where I'm at. That person. And it's there that we need to look at responding in ways that gives the public more options and more insight into this. If complaints go into an official office and they stay in the file and I never see them, how am I to become aware of it? Do I have to just focus on that subject and go?
No. What happens though? What's going to happen? What's going to happen is. There's going to be a formal process. I mean, it's the same. It's going to be what they call statutory. There's going to be a process that has to be followed. They just can't take a complaint and bury it. At that point, they can't seize the asset.
Let me show you an example. You're keeping it on just the forfeiture aspect, and that's fine. As I'm on the complaint taker from the beginning, because this forfeiture piece has been going on for decades, right? So I'm dealing with the person who started getting even the first complaints about this. All the time they have been changing these laws to favor forfeiture, but not many people have entered many suggestions to change things in the favor of the people giving the complaints. And one of the reasons they have not did so is because they were unaware of the types of complaints that they are. So a suggestion and recommendation for people who handle this kind of stuff would be to maybe not disclose names and identifying information with the situation so that the public can become more educated and aware as to what types of things are happening to their peers and people around them.
Well, I think we're trying to get out the kinds of things that have been happening to people and their peers. And I gave one case already where he had a number of people had their cars taken from them. There's another case out in St. Clair County, for instance, where they had a bunch of gunmen with masks break in a house, and they proceeded to take every belonging in the house. And this is every belonging. Sure.
Can we see the dozens of people that have had their merchandise, their cars ticketed and forfeiture?
Yeah, I mean, all you got to do is if you go to 36th District Court or Wayne County Circuit, depending on the amount, you'd be able to see, and you can see or file a FOIA with the Detroit Police Department.
But every time we need legislation, we need numbers of people. I understand the FOIA aspect of getting information, but I'm talking about the organizing, the citizen power to back the people who may be speaking for the people. We seem to have a problem with that part.
Sir,
not just the part of what happens in the mechanics. But how do we aid the organizing of the people who have a water bill problem, for example, who are complaining, or the people who have a bill of any sort?
Sir, this is Commissioner Willie Burton. If you leave your information with the producer for me to reach back out to you, I would love to talk to you offline, and you raised some good points.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. We as you hear the music, we got to go to break.
Well, let me say this, Bob.
We got Tom Choske in the studio, everybody. Everybody know him.
Hey. Go ahead, Rick. What's the final thought here?
May3.com network. It will help us elevate our efficacy to solve problems.
Okay. We're going to break. We have some callers. Hold on. We'll be back right after the.
And I'm getting coffee.
We all love fried food, but the problem is all that excess oil and fat can cause you to become overweight. Well, now there's the Cook Light Aero Fryer, an amazing kitchen miracle that uses air to fry instead of oil, so you can have the same delicious flavor and crispiness of deep frying using little or no oil. Get that deep fried taste and crispiness with up to 70% fewer calories. Enjoy crispy, delicious fries with little or no oil, guilt-free onion rings, cheesy and delicious mozzarella sticks. Call now and bring the Cook Light Aero Fryer into your home, including the Cook Light Aero Fryer recipe recipe book, the unique patented dual tray, air frying mesh basket and tongs, and stainless steel extender ring. You'll get it all for 5 easy payments of $29.95. Be one of the first 500 callers and get this 13-piece knife set, a $175 value, yours free. Try Cooklight Aero Fryer for 30 days. If you don't love it, send it back. But keep the 13-piece knife set as our gift to you. Order in the next 10 minutes and we'll include free shipping. Call now or go online to air2fry.com. That's air2fry.com.
I knew I could get myself out of this. I just needed some hope and some help.
I took the first step to recovery when I made the call.
Since 2014, Addiction Hope and Helpline has answered calls for recovery and treatment 24/7, 365 days a year. If you're depressed, drinking, using drugs, or taking pills, call now and talk to someone who cares.
I had problems just getting to sleep, drinking and using pills every night.
I feel like I'm losing control. I'm afraid I'll lose my job or even my family.
Most insurance covers substance abuse. You can get back on track. Call now for hope and help with proven gentle recovery programs.
I never thought that I could be somebody who didn't drink and use drugs.
I have something to hold on to for strength. I'm in recovery, getting the help I need.
Call 800-379-4799, 800-379-4799.
Hi, I'm Joan London with A Place for Mom. Over the years, we've helped thousands of families find senior care, and today's senior living communities have never been better, with amazing amenities like movie theaters, exercise rooms and swimming pools, public cafes, bars and bistros, even pet care services. And nobody understands your options like the advisors at A Place for Mom. These are local expert advisors that will partner with you to find the perfect place and determine the right level of care, whether that's just a helping hand or full-time memory care. Best of all, it's a free service. Call today. A Place for Mom. You know your family, we know senior living. Together, we'll make the right choice.
Call A Place for Mom right now to get our free ebook on financing senior care, as well as a free referral for senior living communities in your area. Call 1-800-436-2907. That's 1-800-436-2907.
40 million. That's the number of free phones still available and the number of how many Americans can still get prescriptions free.
Free could be wonderful. That's why I'm still working at 77 years old to pay off my prescriptions.
I needed to have a prescription filled and I had to leave because I couldn't afford it.
Call now and see what's available for you. Free prescriptions. Over 10 million people get prescriptions free, and the program has expanded so another 40 million can. Free dental. Over 15,000 dentists have provided over $330 million in free dental work. Free cell phones. 40 million free cell phones are still available with free minutes and more.
Free cell phone would change my life right now because it is something I cannot afford to get.
Medical supplies like back braces, knee braces, and diabetic supplies may be covered too. The free RX Plus hotline has saved callers over $12 million on their prescription costs. These free programs are now available to 40 million more people. Call now.
George Hunter's number.
And good morning. You're listening to Robert Ficano, and we've been joined by Tom Choske, also quite knowledgeable on the forfeiture, Commissioner Willie Burton, and Scotty Boman. Scotty, your name's easy because it's so close, or it's just like the old Red Wing coach, the kick in there. We're talking a little bit about, actually quite a bit about civil forfeiture and some of the results, new legislation that's being introduced. There's a bit of optimism that now the new legislation is going to be able to be passed. It was stalled before this. The Senate, the Michigan Senate, was stopping it, but there seems to be more of a urgency to get it done this time.
Yeah, now that there's a real strong bipartisan push, we see that the governor's in support of reform, we see the attorney general's in support of reform, and we've also seen Republican leaders are now in support of that reform. So there's, for those who don't know, there was a package introduced in the state Senate last year, and this would have exempted civil asset forfeitures under $50,000. So this package, it passed the state House, but it died in the state Senate, where the majority leader at the time was not in favor of it.
why the $50,000? What I mean, if they're seizing, they're seizing, whether it's over $50,000 or not. I mean, it could affect the house. We've been raising that in studio here.
And that says something, too. We have to understand that this legislation was sponsored by somebody who lives in Macomb County, where you have certain higher values on some assets. So $50,000 is a way that you could protect some people's major assets. But, in the city of Detroit, we have houses that are valued less than $50,000, lots of cars that are way under $50,000, whereas in his district, your car might be $50,000,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I was going to say the thing that's interesting is both DeCito, who introduced this thing, probably the same guy who did it in the House last year.
Exactly. Yeah,
he moved up to the state Senate.
Yep.
And Dana Nessel both are arguing from principle as to why this needs to be changed in terms of due process and presumption of innocence and those types of principles. And then we get this dollar amount of $50,000, which seems to be more arguing from an angle of pragmatism or expediency than principle. So it's kind of, I suppose maybe it's a compromise. Maybe that's what DeCito means when he says this strikes a balance. But if you are going from principle, it seems like the only balance is to really follow through on principle and just simply make that the rule across the board.
Oh, definitely.
And I mean, what I see possibly going wrong here, while I think the bill will be an improvement over what we got, what I see possibly going wrong is the people doing the seizure going, you know what, we got to grab a little more, because if we can't get $50,000 worth, then we're not going to be able to keep it if we don't convict them. That kind of thinking might go into play, or specifically looking for the more valuable vehicles, which in the past has been a problem. There have been cases where, for instance, there may have been somebody where they've been pretty much ignoring, for instance, improper growing operations like in California. But then one person has a plant on a huge ranch where they couldn't even really know that the plant was there possibly. Maybe someone trespassed and planted the seed or whatever, and they take the whole property because it's worth more money.
A bunch of plants. Okay, Jackie, you're on with the panel here.
Good morning. I'm enjoying your program.
Well, thank you.
What I would like to see happen is the law removed altogether. What type of legislators do we have that would have ever voted to even think about a law like this, to take people's property without due process? I remember exactly.
It does reverse the burden. It's an unusual semi-civil
and there's no way to correct it. Remove it, and it needs to be removed right away. Not next year, not 3 or 4 years from now. It needs to be removed right now. It's a law against the people. There also needs to be where these police officers are not asking for insurance. They can ask for registration. They are not in or should not be in cahoots with the insurance department.
Well, I don't know if they're in cahoots. I mean, the law mandates that you have to have insurance, and that's why they ask for insurance as part of
the insurance companies should send people out on the roads to check insurance.
And Michigan's unusual in that we criminalize lack of insurance, where there's many states where it's required, but it's dealt with as a civil matter, a civil infraction, where in Michigan we have a peculiar matter where it's actually, criminal to be driving around without insurance.
Yeah. Well, Jackie, what you may not be aware of, Jackie, is that there's a federal forfeiture law that supersedes all of this. Just a quick history. President Obama under Eric Holder, who was the Attorney General, what happens is that the federal government will go in, and they go in with local departments, and they'll raid a place, and then at that point what they'll do is they'll start the seizure or forfeiture on it. And the federal government has a much broader power to do it. And what they would do is they would seize the house, and then they would auction it. Then they would spread it to the local law enforcement that was part of the task force with them. For a while, Eric Holder stopped that. Oddly enough, I think at one point he re-invoked that, which I don't know. I don't know why he did. And so under the federal law, and President Trump under his attorney generals have definitely pushed it, is that the federal. So let's say you straighten this out on the state level. What the problem you might have is the federal government then has the authority to seize, and then the locals have a tendency to want to cluster with them in task forces, and they'll get the benefits of that seizure. So, I mean, you got to address it on both levels, actually.
Removed federally and locally and statewide. It's not a law that is. I would think that most of the people in the country would think that this is not a proper way to handle illegal activity. One other thing, the people don't know what laws are being passed. What I see is that a child molester might get 5 years, and somebody that shoots a gun in the air that doesn't hurt anybody gets 25. What kind of sense does that make?
Well,
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Thank you.
You know,
go ahead, Willie.
One of the things, I want to just throw out there is that, it's a lot of people that's out there that are poor, that are struggling, and, we hear your pain, and I think that's what lawmakers are trying to fix this law right now and to help protect those families. And yes, families are entitled to due process. There's always a presumption of innocence until proven otherwise, but it does not give law enforcement agencies the right to keep your property. Everyone is entitled to a due process. I think with the Michigan assets forfeiture, when it was put in place, it was going after those, It
was mostly aimed at the drug dealers. I mean, in terms of
large organizations.
That that was a way to try to block them utilizing their assets, especially for them to transfer their assets. Many times they transfer them to girlfriends, spouses, and things like that. And all this was sort of aimed at trying to stop it. Okay,
but I just want to throw this out there too. You got a lot of officers out there, and they working. So so you got officers out there that's doing their jobs, that's that's working on special detail units and things of that nature. So if everybody entitled to due process,
and a lot of times this avoids it.
And sometimes
go ahead. Go ahead, Ken. Well, let's. We got a number of callers lining up. Ken, you're on with the panel here.
Yeah, the forfeiture laws. I can't understand why nobody does understand. This is violating the Fourth Amendment. I don't know how this could have even gone into the legislature and became some kind of law. I don't get it.
It is. It's been. I mean, I know that on its face, it looks like it's counterintuitive to due process, like the commissioner said. Problem, it's been upheld by the courts. So I mean, it's been challenged in the courts. So it's not unconstitutional until a court actually says that it is. And all the courts, I believe, all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, has said this type of process is constitutional. So the only way you're going to change it is by changing it through the legislature and through the Congress.
Well, or appointing judges that actually follow the Constitution instead of assert power. We have cases where you got presumption of innocence, but then you also have the right to be free from confiscation without compensation.
That's true, but in theory, the judges are supposed to follow the precedent set by the higher court. If the Supreme Court says this is a process that is legal, the only way, I mean, you could be re-challenging for it to be revisited by the Supreme Court or, and things like that. But generally, the judge is supposed to follow. You want them to follow. For example, you don't want judges to sit there and say, I think, abortion is illegal, period. Mm-hmm. The Supreme Court has said over Roe versus Wade that it's, it's a procedure
They do take an oath to uphold the Constitution.
Yeah, I realize that. But, I mean, you're supposed to follow the precedent set by the highest court.
Right, but if they're not following the Constitution, then you're violating your oath.
But the Suprame Court has said it's constitutional. Go ahead.
They're not even following it close, and the legislature should know what the Bill of Rights say. They should know that when you go into office and you take that oath, and your hand should be on the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, you should be able to regurgitate every word for word on that Bill of Rights. You should know those words. That should be mandatory. They should know that thing upside down, and there should be no ambiguity. That's the way it should be. You should know what you're searching, what the articles are. It's the Fourth Amendment. It's spelled out very specifically. I don't care what the lower courts say or the Supreme Court. It's specific. I don't understand how it can be manipulated.
Well, you have to care what Ken. You have to care what the court says. For example, because you could be like President Trump and say, "Here, look what I'm doing." It's the courts that have actually checked him on a number of areas and said, "This is what you have to follow." I mean,
Robert.
But the separation of powers, the court is the ultimate decider of everything. They've decided that a long time ago.
The court's misinterpreting.
Well,
it's not following what the founders put in there. We all know what the founders meant. They've written things aside.
Ken, you can't. We know what the founders put in, but at one time the founders put in that women couldn't vote in the Constitution. At one time they said that an African American is 3/5 of a person. But the courts are the ones that interpret. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's different than the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights themselves are the law of the land. That protects us. You, me, everyone in this country. If we start just manipulating those 10 amendments, then what the hell are we doing here? That's what's happening today. They're violating the Second Amendment. They're manipulating the First Amendment. They're manipulating everything. And they're very specific on what the founders stated. And they have writings of them specifically stating it. That's why they wrote those things. That's why in the Second Amendment it says arms. It didn't say muskets, because they knew in the future things would change.
Well, I don't know if the founders anticipated the nuclear wars and things like that. Yeah. But we appreciate it. Thanks for calling in. You have a great Sunday.
All right.
Thanks. Next up, we have Curtis. Curtis, you're on with the panel here.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I agree with Jackie. The forfeiture laws, everybody's hollering and screaming about the police. But let's start at the beginning. The police do not make laws. You are former sheriff. Let's start at the beginning, okay?
Sure.
Yeah,
no, they do not. They're supposed to follow the law.
Right. And they can't be followed. The police or anybody else don't make the law. So if you want something changed, you have to change the loophole in the law, okay? Which would not allow the police or whoever to use the loopholes. Okay? So everybody's hollering about the police forfeiting this and they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that. Who made the law?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, they are within their legal limits of what they're doing with as the law stands right now, today. That's why they're trying to change the law in the legislature.
The same people calling here screaming and hollering about the police, how wrong the police is the same ones that don't vote.
Well, you're right about.
Be said about that.
Yeah, you're right about the not voting. But this is one thing too that when we're talking about these compromises, and setting these limits, you have to understand there's a financial incentive that when these lawmakers go up there and they're not moving as fast as we want them, it's because they're always asking that other question: how do we fund the police?
Well, and I think it's interesting though that one defense.
You're missing the point. It starts there, though. I don't care what the lobbyists do. I don't care who put money where. The police do not, I repeat, make the laws.
But they got to get paid somehow. There's got to be money to pay them.
One thing I was going to get to, though, is in the legislature, what's kind of odd and I think ironic is that they'll sit there and talk about, gee, we have to keep this here because otherwise where they're going to get their money. But you never ask a burglar, hey, if we have better defenses so people can't rob a house, how is that person going to buy their product? Or how are they going to support themselves? Because they've been living off these robberies. We just say it's wrong and stop it, and then from there you find another way.
They don't make laws. Okay? They can only enforce laws that are passed. Okay? They can only enforce a law that's legal.
That's right.
All right, so it starts at the legislator.
Right, but I think, Curtis, what they're saying is that the legislators recognize that they want to fund the police. Okay, but police and fire are popular. I mean, in terms of funding, because they're the first line of helping people, right?
Yep.
Obvious. There's loopholes with everybody trying to manipulate the legislator to vote their way, but it starts there. That's all I'm saying. They can't enforce anything that's not a law.
Yeah, you're right. But don't forget, a lot of municipalities are up there lobbying and saying, okay, if you're creating a $5,000 hole in my budget for the police. How am I going to fund that? I mean, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's the argument.
And
that's the tension that's going on up
Yeah.
there. And they're saying, I want to put more police on the street.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that the special interest, we all know that, but it starts with them. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but the special interests have phenomenal sway up in Congress as well as the legislature. I mean, we see that every day.
Mm.
If you got a PAC, you're pretty powerful.
Well, you know, I'm glad.
Got to be fixed. You follow what I'm saying?
I'm glad to see that there's new legislation it's put in place to protect, you know, those families, you know, who get their things, you know, repossessed, and now, you know, so that's good. But you know, we also got to pray for, you know, our officers too, you know, when they, you know, get called, you know, out into the field and happen to go up into some of these
dens and things like that.
Yeah, so you know, we got to pray for our officers and keep them safe as well, because you know, it is a dangerous job, but somebody got to do it. But it's also good to see there's new legislation being put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do we go from officers has a dangerous job, which I know very well of, to a legislator making a law regarding forfeiture? They're two separate issues. Well, I understand that law enforcement is a very dangerous job. A fighter fire is a very dangerous job.
Right.
I'm talking about legislators making forfeiture laws.
Well, Curtis, I know that a lot of these forfeited funds are used for bulletproof vests and things like that. So, I mean, it's a hard tension.
Mm-hmm. Especially at the federal level, the DEA is a net revenue generator for the federal government because of the forfeitures. They pay for their whole operations off of that pretty much. Yeah.
Curtis, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it. Got a number of callers here. Jim, you're on with the panel. Jim? Hi, Jim. Jim? Jim,
you got. Please call back on the Robert Ficano show.
Yeah, why don't you call back? We can't. You're in a bad zone here. Can you call back? Okay, let's go to Marcia. Marcia, you're on with the panel here.
Good morning to all your guests, and I also agree with Jackie. And I want the commissioner to keep referring to poor people. These forfeiture laws don't just cover poor people. A young man from the suburbs won like $25,000 or $30,000 at the casino. On his way home, he was stopped, pulled over, and all of his money was confiscated. It's hundreds of court cases all over the United States. Police officers stopping people coming out of the casinos. You can really trace back where the man had got the money from. And he said, I wanted it at the casino, had it in his glove. So these are laws against Americans. And this is the reason why people are against the police, which, the police is doing what they legally do. But these are laws against us, regardless of whether they're poor people and because they're poor and all of that. It's laws against Americans. It is wrong for you to pass the police department with a bunch of toys against the people.
They're not all toys. Bulletproof vests and things like that aren't toys. They're protections for and cars and stuff like that. Those protections for the police.
Yes, but the government is also giving them military grade.
I think they stopped that program. They stopped that program.
No, they have not stopped the program. No, they haven't. But why would you balance that off the back of the people, of Americans? This is what I'm talking about.
I think most police departments are not accepting those.
You know what I really feel here is that, when people get their things, taken away from them, repossessed, or however you want to put it, or confiscated.
It's robbery.
But they are entitled to a due process. And depending on, the outcome of that process, whether it's acquittal or dismissal, I like for people to get their property back. And I think everybody here on this panel like for them to get their property back.
Tell you, do your research. In most instances, you don't get your money back.
We are aware of that. That's why we're having a conversation.
That's why they're trying to change the law too. Okay, if you got a car and it's not worth very much, and they seize it, is it worth going after and paying the redemption fee?
Bob.
But how much am I going to have to spend to go to court to try to get my legal money back out of my glove compartment?
You absolutely right. That's why we having this discussion.
Exactly.
We glad you on the call.
Yeah. We need the fire.
In 2017, there were 1,418 cases where forfeiture where there were forfeitures and there was no conviction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there are police departments that will seize and not then seek a criminal warrant against the individual that they seize from. That is completely wrong. If I think that you're involved in an illegal activity, I mean, forfeiture is one thing, but
you're assuming I walked out of the casino with 20,000.
Okay, casino is one thing, but
you're talking about one incident here. There are millions of incidents, and we hear thousands of them.
There's been several cases like that. A young man had the grandmother
Marcia,
had some money.
Marcia, if I'm an undercover police officer and I see you drive up in your car and I see you do a transaction, give some money to somebody else for some drugs, and comes into the car, do you think that they shouldn't seize the car?
No, listen. You're making assumptions.
Well, you're making assumptions on the casino stuff too.
What?
No.
Marcia,
It can be proven. You can track what money I win in the casino. That money can be tracked.
Yeah, but
you're just not supposed to just stop a person in the car, search their car, find money in there, and say, you said, well, he said, I just won the money at the casino.
But
Marcia, the money.
Marcia, you have officers that are trained to look for certain things, and they are doing their job, when they're out there doing certain things, so one of the things I say, is that, allow law enforcement officers to do their job. And for some reason, if you have a question or a concern about how they're doing their job, you can always raise your concerns here at 910. You can always call the Board of Police Commissioner's office. And once again, anybody and everybody is entitled to a due process.
And the other part of it, Marcia, and I don't know the particular incidents where they seize coming out of the casino, but if you win an enormous amount like that from the casino, they're taking the taxes out right away, and they're giving you paperwork showing that they've removed how much and the amount that was deducted.
Federal banking laws that do get into the whole thing where they try to say that if you have $10,000 in cash or more, the burden is on you to prove you got it legally instead of the other way around. Which again, there's no constitutional basis for it.
If you're going through an airport with over $10,000, they're going to stop, and that's part of the presumption of looking at why you got the money. In cash.
Well, if I won $20,000, I ain't walking with the cash. But I don't gamble, so you don't got to worry about me winning $20,000.
Okay, Marcia, real quick before we get to the other callers, I know you're a big Bernie Sanders supporter.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I hear that he already cut a video saying he's announcing.
Oh, yes, he is. Yeah, I know. We wait.
Okay, well, it's going to be interesting. It'd be nice if you joined the party, though.
Wait a minute. It'd be nice if what?
He joined the party that he wants the nomination for.
You know what?
We taking 2020 by storm, y'all.
If you corporate Democrats think that you're going to do this a second time, rig the election, you all going to get Trump for 4 more years. And I also told you all that Trump did not collude with the Russians. I don't hear any of you corporate Democrats say Hey, he's a horrible person, but he ain't intelligent enough to collude with Russians.
Okay, Marcia, thanks for calling and have a great Sunday. James, you're on with the panel here.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good.
I just want transparency. Willie Burton, all I'm going to tell you is this, man. We all know in Detroit for years that the Detroit police is part of the biggest crime organization that's going on. For you to be a part of that and don't help solve what's going on, you should step down. 2, have Made3.com, Rick, start telling the claims. People that put the claims in are starting to get pissed that the claims are not being exposed, especially when it's police corruption, stealing the vehicles and selling them. Seriously, man, come on now. Now, as far as all this, you stop me and take my $20,000, we got a shootout. And that's serious business. The police.
That's not the right approach.
That's not the right approach.
Hold on. Why is it not the right approach? Why is it not? If we're talking about corrupt cops,
Okay, first of all, broad brush to say that the cops are corrupt is really an injustice for them putting their lives on the line.
You guys are playing games in Detroit. Y'all know the deaths that happen based off the police, and here's what I'm mad about. Y'all know it. Y'all busters, man. Stop it.
You know, I don't think. Have you been actually watching the police commission meetings on cable or attending them? Have you actually seen Willie Burton fighting for transparency on the police commission and the other people overruling him?
Listen, forget that part. I am a victim. You can't talk to the victim and try to make it seem like you're going to appease the victim, brother. Now do you get it? You're talking to one of the victims. Now, what do you have for me as the victim other than that crap?
Well, look, this is what I have for you is he's been fighting for transparency, and you're saying that we need transparency and he should step down. That's like totally opposite.
Let me ask you as you go.
Okay, look, you can't paint with a broad brush. I know the commissioner has stood up for transparency. In fact, has gotten quite a bit of controversy with standing up for it.
Yeah,
the commissioner was too busy trying to get Mary Waters in with that little group they was with. Willie Burton, you already know who's talking to you, brother. That's why I hate Detroit. Y'all are scared of the truth.
That's unfair. That's unfair.
One of the things that
let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, Willie.
One of the things the Border Police Commission has approved for economic hardship to protect Detroiters who may get their cars repossessed by the Detroit Police Department.
Willie, y'all gonna give me my money back for my truck that y'all let the tow truck company sell and take it off a lot?
Well,
parking spot.
Well, you have to
my money back.
Call the Border Police Commissioner's office, 313-596-1830.
James, have you filed a complaint with the police commission?
I did. I've been through all that crap. You guys always find the person. The police didn't do anything wrong. So I tell you what, it's already being.
You have to file an appeal before the Border Police Commissioner's chief investigator's office.
Hold on.
And after it leaves there, then it comes before the commission. That's the process.
Be honest. Willie Burton, be honest to the public. You guys, 80% of those cases, y'all find that the police did not do anything.
That's not true. Okay, James.
You talking, man?
James, I know you had an individual case that you're frustrated with. I understand that. It's not fair to broad brush. Okay.
Bob, this ain't about you. Willie, let's bring the paperwork and do a panel. Let's get the victims.
You have to talk to the Border Police Commissioner's office, and then you also need to talk to the chief investigator.
Bring back your complaint, and I'm sure they're going to look at it.
Yeah,
okay, James,
bring back your complaint before the Border Police Commissioners and call 596-1830 and ask to speak to the chief investigator, and then patch you through. Okay.
We got to go to break. James, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it. We're going to be back. George Hunter's going to be back on the phone with us, talking about some of the hot stories, talking about law enforcement. And we'll be going. Thanks for listening. 9:10 a.m. You can call us at 313-778-7600. You're listening to the Robert Ficano Show.
Like the devil's trying to work and though I'm blessed, I still got to handle the things I go through. It's good to have a friend with another perspective to show you. Someone you know that knows you and gives you motivation.
The day you lose your strength is the day you lose your independence. Muscle is lost with age, affecting your energy, balance, and mobility. Before you know it, you're depending on others just to get through the day. But you can reverse and prevent muscle loss. Introducing MyoHealth, a revolutionary proven approach to increased muscle strength and function in as little as 30 days. Live life on your terms with more energy and confidence.
After a serious health issue put me down, MyoHealth's getting me back up again.
I'm doing activities that I haven't done for a long time. It really works.
MyoHealth is a safe, natural dietary supplement, the result of decades of research and 24 human clinical studies. You can live stronger at any age with greater strength, mobility, balance, and energy. Call or go online now and take the MyoHealth 30-Day Strength Challenge.
So you've decided to go to college. That's cool. So pop quiz. Which is a better way to earn your degree? Commute to college and fill your gas tank, get stuck in traffic, drive in bad weather, try to find a parking space, walk a half-mile to class, or learn online at Independence University. In the park on a bench, on the beach on a towel, or on your couch with your kid, your campus is wherever you want it to be. You don't go to college. College goes to you. That's independence. That's Independence University. You schedule classes around your schedule, and all your supplies, including a brand new laptop and tablet, are included with tuition. At Independence U, you'll learn from professional instructors with real work experience. You'll get personal support in school and employment assistance when you graduate. Get your degree, but keep your life. That's independence. That's Independence University. So if you're really smart, you call now.
Call 1-800-556-7791.
Independence U for an independent you.
Call 1-800-556-7791.
Are you getting the most out of your Medicare plan? Are you sure? Many people with Medicare are eligible for plans that include extra benefits in addition to those found in original Medicare. Benefits like dental, vision, and prescription drug coverage. Call now to see if you're eligible to enroll. The consultation is free with no obligation to enroll. In addition to hospital and medical coverage, at no extra cost, you could also get coverage for prescription drugs, dental, hearing, vision, and more. In many areas, plans with benefits are available with $0 copays for many services, $0 monthly premiums, or $0 deductibles. That's hospital, medical, prescription drug, dental coverage, and more included in one plan with premiums that may be as low as $0 a month. Call now to see if you're eligible to enroll. The consultation is free and there's no obligation to enroll.
Call 1-800-571-8580. That's 1-800-571-8580.
Listen up, America. Are you or a loved one suffering with an addiction to alcohol, opiates, prescription painkillers, or other drugs? There is hope. Medication-assisted treatment is proven most effective for opiate addiction recovery. Utilizing medications such as methadone, Suboxone, and Subutex, combined with inpatient treatment, you can achieve lasting recovery. Most insurance is accepted, so call us now.
Please call 800-625-5860.
So you've decided to go to college. That's cool. So pop quiz. Which is a better way to earn your degree? Commute to college and fill your gas tank, get stuck in traffic, drive in bad weather, try to find a parking space, walk a half mile to class, or learn online at Independence University. You don't go to college. College goes to you. That's independence. That's Independence University. And all your supplies, including a brand new laptop and tablet, are included with tuition. Independence U for an independent you.
Call 1-800-556-7791.
Do you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS? If so, you may qualify for the IRS's Fresh Start program. The Fresh Start program is one of the biggest tax breaks the IRS has offered. Call Tax Group Center at 800-685-6150 to see if you qualify for the IRS's Fresh Start program. Their team of tax experts and attorneys will get you the best tax settlement possible. Call 800-685-6150 now to learn if you qualify for the IRS's Fresh Start program. Call Tax Group Center at 800-685-6150. 800-685-6150.
We're the hottest station in town. Whatever you need, it's right here on 910 AM Superstation. The most powerful voices in the urban community.
3, 2, 1.
You're listening to 910 AM Superstation. You're listening to 910 AM Superstation.
The best in the city.
Is that a faucet running? That's not a faucet. That's a river rushing through the forest. Forest rivers provide over 100 million people with clean water to drink.
What? I can't hear you because of the vacuum.
That's not a vacuum. That's the trees in the forest cleaning up the air we breathe.
I didn't know the trees were so amazing.
Yep, and the forest gives us shade, trees to climb.
That's awesome. Let's go explore some more.
Visit the forest today and enjoy all it does, just for you. To learn more about the forest and find one near you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
I want to be a warm fleece on a cold day.
Football
I want to be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Steven.
Who said that?
Me, down here.
What are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
Well, what are you doing in my room?
I'm your sense of adventure. Don't you remember me? Don't you know that we miss you?
Miss me? Who misses me?
You know, all your friends in the forest. The trees, the pond, that little fort that you made out of branches. We all miss you.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
The forest is not that far away. Have an adventure today. I'm sure your mom would take you.
You're right. I should get out. I want to have fun. Play in puddles, catch frogs, and climb trees. Hey, Mom!
Yeah, hon? Stephen, what is that in your hand?
It's my sense of adventure, Mom. It's telling me we need to get out of the house and have some fun in nature today.
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
WFDF Farmington Hills, Detroit, 910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media.
And good morning. You're listening to 910 AM, the Superstation. You can join us at 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. We're about to go on with George Hunter, who is a reporter with the Detroit News. Just to finish up real quick on some of the forfeiture. Willie, what's that number if somebody has a complaint that they can call the police commission on?
You can always call the Border Police Commissioner's office at 313-596-1830 if you have a complaint or concern. Our office is always working for you up until 4:30, Monday through Friday.
Okay. Any final thoughts on some forfeiture here, or we might be covering it with our reporter?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I just want to say is, this is something that was supposed to come through. This is getting a little into the politics here. This is one of those areas when the governor gave her State of the State address and the legislators started out, they said, this is something we can get done, right? This is something we're going to do quickly for the people of Michigan. I'm concerned right now that with some of the games they've been playing up in Lansing, that this might not be as quick as we had thought originally. We thought this would get done already, that by the time we'd be talking about this, the legislation had already been passed through the House. But we'll see.
I can guarantee you legislation doesn't pass that fast. I mean, unless it's in lame duck. I've not seen it.
Yeah, but, the Senate did pass it. A vast majority of senators passed it, so I was hopeful that we'd be getting it through. I'd hope it was one of the first bills that have passed and gone through in January, but instead they're playing some games with the Department of Environmental Quality up there now.
And, through our listeners out there, always acknowledge and recognize those that are fighting and speaking for you. So that's always
like
important
yourself,
to know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. On the line is going to join us George Hunter. George, are you on with us here?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Great.
Hey,
How about you?
Hey, George.
You got a whole panel here. Okay, Scotty Boman, Tom Choske, the Commissioner, Willie, Burton, and myself here. And I know you've been, looks like you've been writing quite a few stories here lately, George, on a number of topics.
Last week I was on vacation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I needed it. You're right. I was really kind of scrambling to the finish line. It's so much news lately.
Yeah. And I know this has been a hot topic, but and now I understand there's an investigation going on about the police officer that initially, when he stopped the young lady, and then he actually even offered her a ride, but then he videotaped her or videoed her on his apparently on his phone. Then he posted it, talking about black magic and starting of Black History Month and things like that. And now they're starting to find out that he had posted other type or similar type videos in the past.
Yeah, he's kind of got a checkered history there, and the investigation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Burton. I believe that the chief said he was going to have a report to the board. Well, he would be finished with the investigation within 2 weeks. Now, he said that a week ago Thursday, and then a week after that he would present. That was his deadline, if I'm not mistaken, for presenting
That's correct.
a report on where those And if you remember, there were two investigations. There's the internal investigation into this officer, putting that on video and all that. And there's also that environmental, what he called an environmental audit of the 6th Precinct. Now, at last week's board meeting, the chief said that preliminarily they found that there's some issues on the night shift over there at the 6th Precinct where these two officers work. According to the chief, there's some sort of cultural, they're the senior officers. And he made it sound like there's kind of an issue where they're kind of leading the way in kind of racist jokes, stuff like that. I don't want to get too deep into my characterization of what he said because he didn't go into too many details, but he certainly did say, and again, Will, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the indication was that there were issues on that night shift where they worked involving racial issues. You know?
That's correct.
So looking into the whole thing, it's kind of crazy
Judge,
story.
what precinct was this? 6?
That was 6.
Okay.
6 precinct. Yeah.
So we're still waiting to hear the chief's report on that, and hopefully we hear something this upcoming week.
Okay. I know you had some other stories too, George. It looks like.
It was crazy. Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob.
Go ahead. Run through some of the stories.
Lord! Well, there was the homicide cop who took the
evidence.
Home.
That makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. It opens up. If I'm a defense attorney, if he had one of my cases, first thing I'm doing is filing a motion for a new trial.
If the evidence locker at his house was connected to the case.
And they found that by chance, really. I mean, it was kind of odd because he was a 20-year veteran. I believe he had a pension, yet he was being evicted from his house. So the circumstances just seemed really odd. In terms of him being evicted, it seemed like he would have had, income that would have been able to sustain himself. But not only that, but people getting, get problems and stuff. Yeah. But the other part of this is him actually retaining the evidence as a homicide detective, which
there's so many questions. First and foremost is how many cases does it? Because they don't know. It could all be evidence, a bunch of evidence for just one case. It could be 20 cases. They have no idea. And then the next obvious question is, were those cases tainted? Were there convictions or non-convictions that were tainted because this guy hoarded evidence? And I guess my third question would be why. First of all, I want to know if any cases were tainted and how many. But then I want to dig into why. Was it an accident? Is this common? Not that I'm aware of. I can imagine. There's chain of custody issues at D. When my sister was in the evidence room, she would always complain that some cops, not many, but there were too many officers, even a handful, that would come in and just drop the evidence off, and she'd be, hang on, you got to sign for it. I got to go. This was before the consent judgment. This was before all that. And actually, it was when remember they found a bunch of baking soda. They were switching baking soda for baking soda in the property room. Yeah, this was 15, 20 years ago, but they brought my sister in because I guess she was a good cop, and they wanted somebody down there. But yeah, she used to complain about this. There's chain of custody issues. That I don't know that this is common. I've never heard of it, and I can't fathom why in the world you'd want to dirty up evidence by taking it home. Again, I'm only speaking from a limited. There may be plausible reasons why a homicide detective might take evidence home for one night or something, but I can't imagine there's any reason to keep it for 10 years.
We know that screws things up only from the standpoint that we've seen it in arbitrations. I forget a chain of custody, and this was not criminal, but this was, I forget his name. He was the batting champion of the National League. They did a drug test, and the clerk that actually had his sample was going to ship it. He wasn't able to ship it that night.
Braun?
He brought it home with
Sammy
him.
Sosa? Or
it wasn't Sosa. I can't remember
McGuire?
who it was.
Ryan Braun, I believe.
Braun, okay,
Braun,
yes.
okay.
And then he held on to it. He didn't, and that broke the chain of evidence, and he never could be punished for the for the steroids and the things that he had under the chain of evidence for Major League Baseball. So, it is a major thing when you do break that chain of evidence. That was just an arbitration. When I say just, it wasn't like a criminal conviction.
It looks like
that was
in this
going
case, the evidence was just forgotten. It was just sitting at the guy's house. It wasn't even like a brief thing. It was years.
Yeah, but was he withholding it? If it's evidence, whether it's exculpatory or not, if I'm the defense, I have the right to see all the evidence that you have, okay? And some of it might be exculpatory. Some of it might be things that actually shows the innocence of my client.
Or it could even be the opposite, a case where somebody, I guess we could speculate, but I could imagine a case where a person gets paid off to make the evidence disappear against somebody. Yeah.
Detroit has...
those are all... Oh, that's a particular... Scotty, it's funny. When reporting, there's a little saying that I've come up with through the years of reporting in Detroit is that in this city, sometimes what you think, like, for instance, in this case, and again, I'm speculating, so let me qualify what I'm saying here. But, so, when something happens, you think it might be nefarious. In Detroit, there's always an equally chance that it's just incompetence.
Yeah.
It's completely plausible. It's completely plausible what you said, Scotty, is that maybe some guy got paid off to hold off some evidence or get, but that, although you'd think he'd destroy it instead of holding on to it. But I mean, the point is that any one of those is plausible. A lot of times where you think it's some kind of evil, nefarious plot, it's just somebody's incompetent and didn't do their job, and so who knows what this is. But that's one of the first. I got a pile of stuff to check when I get back, and that's one of them. And the other big news was that funeral home that they just really slapped down, Perry Funeral Home. That whole crazy thing has kind of come to a head. That story is nuts, and I still don't know exactly what this is, and I'm not sure investigators do yet.
It makes no sense that they were holding fetuses and hiding the fetuses. In essence, because some of them were found up in the attic, I believe, and things like that. And the state, I think they're regulated through Lara. I'm testing my memory here. And Lara has recommended that whole funeral home be closed down, and in another part of it though is that many times people don't have the money to bury their loved ones. I mean that's one of the issues that always comes up.
The thing with fetuses, I always thought that was like they became medical specimens or something like that.
No, you got to sign a waiver to allow that if if you feel there's some scientific reason to allow the fetus to be examined. I'm sorry. Go ahead, George.
I'm sorry about. No, I've gotten tons of phone calls since we started covering these stories from people whose own loved ones. At the Cantrell, for instance, this poor woman. She said, "I buried. We went to the funeral. We went to the thing and we watched the casket go in the ground. So they went home thinking they'd buried their mom. Like 3 or 4 months later, it's out of their mind now. They're having closure, they're healing. They get a phone call and say, your mom's remains were found in the back room with mold all over. And they're like, that's impossible. We watched. I know it's horrific. We watched the casket go in the ground. This can't be. It's like, no, that wasn't her in there. We found her in this back room, just sitting there in an unrefrigerated room with mold all over. It's and the little babies, it's just crazy. The nutty story, it really is, and dozens of fetuses, and they're calling these fetuses, but a lot of them are babies. They're not, they're either stillborn or they're live birth babies where they lived for 8 hours maybe and then died. And, they found all those at the hospital. There's another element to this. That's the one we've been reporting, is there's a whistleblower that's talked to us, and she's also talked to Lara. And they're investigating this. In 2015, according to this whistleblower, they found 37 babies' bodies, and they tried to cover it up. They said that according to the whistleblower, this is what Lara's investigating.
What at the funeral home?
No, this was at Harper Hutzel. And
at the hospital?
Wow.
Yes, they found these bunch of babies, and they found some more. I did a story the week before last, where they went in and found more bodies in the DMC morgue.
Did you say 30,000?
No, 37.
No, 37. There were 37, and then I can't remember. There were more than 50 or 60, some of which had been there for more than 20 years. And again, the first instinct is that maybe there's something nefarious, like a Gosnell was the first thing that went through my mind, and I did a little research on that. I don't think that's the case. I don't want to shut that off. When you're investigating something, you never. But it's another one of those where it could very easily be something completely nefarious, or it could just be gross incompetence. Now on the stuff in the ceiling part at Cantrell, the allegation from the letter that was sent to Lara that we FOIA'd and got a hold of, my coworker Karen got a hold of that, and basically that was allegedly done to try to, they called the cops on them. They were going to try and hide those. The whole thing is nuts. There's fraud allegations. And that they stuffed those.
If you're going through the expense of an actual burial and you're putting the casket in the ground, why not put the body in there?
Right. Yeah. Why would one want to?
It just doesn't even make any sense.
Remains and so on.
Okay, we got some callers here. Aiden, you're on with Mr. Hunter and with the panel.
Thank you. What about the case down in, I think it's New York, at the Greens facility, where the body is missing of an inmate? His name is Anthony Myrie.
Where's this, New York, Aiden?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that. I I don't know about that, but if there's a death, I know in the Wayne County Jail or in even the prison system, they have to call in an independent law enforcement agency to verify, even if it's a suicide, it's an obvious suicide or anything like that. They have to call in, and there has to be a determination by a detective, and then there's a formal procedure that's followed, for disposing of the body. I mean, it could be turned to the family or whatever it is, but it becomes very paper intense on something like that.
Yeah, there's whole rules, and what I'm told is. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
No, I was just making a statement of what the girlfriend made. When she went to visit him, he was already scared. And once the visit was over, they took him and they put him inside the hole. Then she received a call stating that he didn't make it. So she started, she was asking, what they meant by that. They stated he passed away. They was then looking for his body, and they can't find it nowhere. They gave an account the body was here, there. When they went looking, they can't find the body anywhere.
This isn't the same prison that had the electricity and the lights and everything else go out in the heat for 3 or 4 days?
I remember that story, but
that was out in New York.
I don't know if that's the same. I don't know if that's the same one. That story was because they stated because the winter froze the pipes up and messed the water pipes up, something like that.
Yeah.
And they couldn't receive any heat.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not familiar with one in New York. I know that at least in Michigan that there is a formal process, including a different law enforcement agency that actually makes a determination. It might be internal affair, or there might be an internal affairs initially to look at the body and things like that, but eventually a separate law enforcement agency, like if it's in the Wayne County Jail, Detroit PD, or something like that, would come in and actually make a determination as to the cause of death and what happened and stuff. So it's a formal
we'll follow
process.
the story and see what comes from there.
Okay.
So thank you. I'll continue to listen in.
Okay, thanks, Aiden.
Hey,
Go ahead, George.
Nothing, Bob. How many people usually die in the Wayne County Jail a year, approximately? You get 10, more than 10?
No, God. If you got 10, you got a real tragedy going
really?
here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean
I think it might be higher as many as you get in there. And
they usually have about 45,000 people that go through there, and one of the problems, if you have 7 or 8 or 9, your paper and everybody else will be crawling all over that institution because that's very, very high in terms of that. When I say, especially suicide, I mean suicide. There are a lot of court orders. There are a lot of ways that the system is set up to prevent that exactly. And one of the things, in the classification system, the way it's set up, if you're a first-time person that's in the system, you're going to be extremely watched, because that's when most people, when it's their first time through the system, is when the depression or the embarrassment and the shame and everything else, a lot of times it goes with it. And, suicide is one of the thoughts that goes through that. One of the problems you have is that there's a lot of local lockups. So initially you're not going through the Wayne County Jail, where they have mental health. They have its own city that does the registry and actually determines things on a person's background and stuff. You have a local lockup, and so if you get arrested in wherever, Livonia, Warren, or something like that, they have a local lockup that they hold you until the arraignment. And many times, and if that's the first time for someone, if the local lockup isn't trained real well, that's where you can really have some problems. You get a young person, they've never been arrested before, even could be for drunk driving and stuff. They are scared. What am I going to say to my parents, my friends, and things like that? It just has a disproportionate impact on the person that's being held, and that's where a lot of lawsuits come out of. George, if you can hold on to it, we got to go to a break here, if you don't mind. We appreciate it. You're listening to 910 AM Superstation.
Gonna stay strong and keep it tight. I'll be there indeed.
Yes, let me talk to you. See, when it feels like the sun ain't shining bright enough.
Are you drowning in debt? Struggling just to make minimum payments? It's not your fault. Serious debt can happen to anyone, but there is hope. Our debt-free program has helped thousands of good people just like you eliminate their credit card debt. Call us today, and we will dramatically reduce your credit card debt down to just a fraction of what you owe. The call is free. The consultation is free. Take control of your credit debt. Take control of your life again. Call now to see how our debt-free program can work for you.
Call 800-872-5230.
If you or a loved one underwent hernia surgery between 2010 and 2016 and then suffered serious complications, call right now. You may be entitled to financial compensation. Complications associated with physomesh include chronic pain, infection, adhesions, mesh migration, reopening of the hernia, and other serious injuries. Call right now.
Call 1-800-799-2091. Again, that's 1-800-799-2091.
Attention! In July 2018, Bayer announced that it will be halting its sales of Assure. The Assure birth control may break or migrate after insertion, puncturing the fallopian tube, resulting in corrective surgery to remove the device. Thousands of women have reported debilitating health problems to the FDA. In April 2018, the FDA restricted sales of Assure to protect women and required that patients receive risk information.
Please call 800-425-9539.
The 910 AM app has been integrated with Alexa and is now live in the App Store. To use 910 AM on your Alexa device, you can say Alexa commands in two ways. If your Fire TV device has a microphone button, you can hold down the microphone button to say the commands. If you've linked your Echo or Echo Dot to your Fire TV, you can use the trigger word Alexa without pushing your microphone buttons to say commands. Start listening to 910 AM Superstation now from the comfort of your home.
And good morning. You're listening to 910 AM, the Superstation. We have our guest here, George Hunter, with the Detroit News, reporter. Covers a lot of criminal activity in the metropolitan area. I should say law enforcement. Also Scotty Boman. Also Tom Choske.
Yeah, Choske, you got it. Yep.
Police Commissioner Willie Burton. You're listening to Robert Ficano. George, it's interesting. I know you probably attend a lot of the police commission meetings, and Willie was just showing me, Commissioner Burton was just showing me some of the charts of the number of officers leaving, and it's interesting. They break it down by rank. The highest rank to have left, there's only been one, which has been the captain. After that, there's 12 sergeants. This is since July. 12 sergeants and 2 detectives, but there's 118 police officers that have left since July out of the city of Detroit. And so, which is raising, the issue that people go through the academy, and as soon as they find a better job or better offer in terms of their salary and benefits and things like that, they move on. I know the Wayne County Sheriff's Department has the same issue. That is part of that. And it seems to be that we're never catching up and actually fulfilling the number of officers that we actually have slots for.
Yeah, and there's another domino effect to that as well, is the officers who are staying are often being put in positions that maybe they're not ready for. For instance, I think, which high-profile case was it? Oh, it was a case that where there were a couple cops that were chasing some guy on the east side in violation of the department rules, the regulations on high-speed chases, and the guy slammed into a tree. It was alleged that they kind of drove away and then came back and pretended that. Anyway, those two were special ops, and they were both, I think, a little more than a year on the job. They're putting, because they have to. They don't have any bodies, so they're putting them in 30 series and special ops and in units that veteran officers are kind of aghast. It's like, you mean he's a rookie and they got him on special ops? That can't, it shouldn't be. So so you're right. They're actually recruiting. They've been doing that for quite some time. Other cities will recruit, there. And ironically, on this one, it's the union, which is now, the union is hurting because of this. Obviously, they don't have any people, and the people who are left, their tongues are hanging out. But ironically, it was the union that fought to allow, because they used to have a rule in place, and I don't remember exactly when, but at one time there was a rule where you had to stay on, because Detroit's one of the few cities that pays 100% for the training.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, other people, if you go to another, you want to be a cop in another city, you pay for the schooling. It's considered like school. I think it's about $5,000 to go through the MCO's certification.
Right, you go to usually a community college.
Yeah, George.
Schoolcraft. Yeah,
George, I just want.
In Detroit, you'd get nobody if they had to pay in Detroit, so they waived that. And there used to be.
Yeah, they run their own academy, basically.
There is a way around that, which is if you have a tuition, but the tuition can be suspended. You can effectively have a forbearance on the tuition where while you are working as a Detroit police officer and after a certain number of years get an award where that is then forgiven, then what happens is the burden is to pay the tuition.
Mm-hmm.
But the
but you got to go through
but
years to
then
do
you
that.
still, if you stay, you don't have to pay it, and so that you end up having you can still get
Yeah,
officers.
there's been some legislation introduced in Lansing to actually institute that. It died last session, but we'll see if it comes back up in this new legislature as well.
I like to see the officers that coming onto the force. I like for them to come up, sign up for a career, not just for a job and then just leave. I'm just waiting for the day to see that because we are losing a lot of officers to other agencies where Detroit has happened to become the training ground. And, so I think recruiting can do a much better job as far as trying to figure out who's trying to make a career and a commitment to serve here in Detroit. And because when we train our officers and they leave to go to another agency, whether it's for higher compensation or whatever, Detroiters loses out in the long run. So,
yeah, and it's spun into a little bit of a different problem at Wayne County at the sheriff's department, which is interesting. When I was actually sheriff, the fight was always to try to get enough academies because whoever was working in the jail, they started in the jail. They did not necessarily been through the academy, but Wayne County pays for the academy for you to go through. But the tension was always how many can we move up through the academy and how quickly can we do it. Today, it's kind of interesting. Today, that push isn't necessarily there. I'm willing to make my career in the jail and not worry about becoming certified to be an officer to go, we say, going on the road in order to do it, which is a different dynamic than what I faced as sheriff because with the union and stuff, we were always trying to negotiate how we could get more through the academy, bigger classes and things like that so that we weren't shorting the jail in what was going on. And today, there seems to be this mindset that, I'm going to spend my career in the jail. The overtime's good. I don't mind it. I got control of what's going on, and I don't want to go through the certification.
George, you made a good point too when you talked about officers, working in special ops and things of that nature. We have seen a trend of officers coming out the academy, and within 6 months to a year, they are working in those detail units like special ops. And those units used to be for officers that had, some time on the job. So we started to see rookie officers in those type of details. And, and right now, the average officer that got, have 5 years of on the job is now, is to just become the new seniority officer. So, I would love to see that turn around a little bit. So,
well,
we're not isn't just this,
go ahead.
Detroit. I talked to the Troy police chief, for instance. He said, I think 70-85% of his force has less than 5 years on the force. Police, police in Michigan, the last time I looked, they had lost more than 2,000 police jobs. There were fewer than 2,000 cops, in the last 20 years or so in Michigan. Mm-hmm. And because it's just not considered a sexy job, and a lot of people don't like police officers, and people in my profession have helped that, not my coverage, but nationally sometimes they propagate things that aren't true, and but no. So what for myriad reasons, law enforcement isn't, and the pensions have taken a hit almost everywhere. The Wayne, my brother spent 30 years in the jail. He was the guy you were talking about, Bob. He was at Aurora for years. He didn't really want to go out in the field. He was happy working in the jail. He did that for 30 years.
Yeah. I remember your brother. I saw him at the last funeral,
he
unfortunately.
He finally called it a day, and now he doesn't know what to do with himself. He's trying to renovate his house and keep busy. You know how that goes.
Well, that only goes so long.
A radio show, Bob. That's the thing.
Well, I'm not saying we're going to make any news here, but Willie, I know that you've been sort of boisterous at some of the commission meetings. That you feel that the response time needs a better determination in what is response time. I don't know if it's true or not. I understand that part of the formula now is that if a police officer stops you on a stop, that's considered or rolled into some of the response time, that you immediately, responded to a situation, which technically I guess is true because you've stopped them and it's an incident or a situation, but it's not in the traditional way that you think of somebody calling and saying, there's a burglar coming into my house, and how quickly the police respond to it.
What's police response times is that, talking to many of my constituents, they say that this police response times is deplorable, and they love to see, faster response times. I mean, there was a situation at Parkview Place, Senior Towers, which is 1401 Shane, where a lady was sexually assaulted on the outside of the grounds of the building, and this happens to be a green light, and took officers from the 7th precinct 28 minutes to arrive, and the precinct is right around the corner. That's just one incident. I mean, there's other incidents, where it's taken as much as a half hour to 40-some minutes, and
is there a are the traffic stops rolled into the actual response time? Do we know?
I think there was something that I read, and I believe,
because I know you raised it actually at the commission meeting.
Yeah, there, it's we shouldn't have traffic stops, being counted. So, I'm not giving up on this one. So I'm going to.
They're not counted. When I asked them about that, because there was the Deadline Detroit story, and they said that's not accurate, that they're not counted in the. That's one of those things. I think the LaDuff told me that he also had someone on the inside who gave him some stats too. But I think they took that from the data portal. And Christine McDonald, who's one of the best reporters I've ever worked with, she's our
she's covered me before. Yes, I know.
Yeah, she's pretty good. She's
a bulldog.
And the thing about her is you won't notice her. I mean, the people she's writing about, you'll notice her story. She kind of stays in the background. But she's very good.
She just did the Eric Sabri story on the Wayne County Treasurer. Yeah.
Yeah, she's top notch. And anyway, so we tried to crunch some of those numbers. There's just too much noise. And there is a disclaimer right on there. It says, I put this in my story, it says basically you can't trust these numbers.
Which is just kind of
unreal. The data portal. Yeah, because, I mean, there was one response time was like negative 69 hours. So if you're trying, there were like 5 of those. So if you're trying
what does that mean, a negative 69 hours? It took them 69
hours. Was
that
movie pre-crime? They got the people to pick the crime before it happened?
Minority Report.
Yeah.
Hop in the DeLorean and get the flux capacitor.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking they couldn't explain it. I'm thinking it was just an error in input. There were a few of those. There were others where the response time was 50 hours, and then the thought there. I asked the brass about that, and they said, well, maybe that's where they didn't close the case out, and then 2 days later they figured they had to do it. I mean, the point being is that there is a disclaimer right on there, and that's why we don't use that data, because there's just too much noise in it. It's okay for a snapshot kind of thing, but like for instance, if I want to look at which precincts had the most homicides last year, that something like homicides, you can get a pretty good. They usually are not going to screw those up. And by the way, I don't every
usually.
Because there are not that many, but no, we caught them in 2007 or 8. Well, I can't say they were purposely manipulating the homicide numbers, but I think we found what we did was we compared their figures with what the Wayne County medical examiners came out with. This is like 10, 12 years ago when we did this, and we found that there were like 50, 60 extra homicides that they hadn't claimed in Detroit. Again, I don't know. You can't say they did it on purpose or not. That's not even an area where I care to go because I'm not a mind reader. But the fact is
that's a lot, though. That's a lot to miss.
Oh yeah, it was political too because when they added the new tally after our story, it made Detroit once again. We leapfrogged over Baltimore, I believe, that year, and made us the most violent city. Blah blah blah. Again. So every year since then, that's the first thing I do is I FOIA the Wayne County Medical Examiner's report and then match it up with DPD's. I'm double-checking the numbers. The old saying in journalism is if my mom tells me it's raining outside, I don't care. That's my mom. But I'm going to go up and look outside and make sure it's raining before I put that in the newspaper. So, I'm not saying I don't believe DPD, but it's my job it's my job to be skeptical when they put numbers. So that's the one I can double check. I can't double check the other, like the shootings, because of HIPAA laws, and there's just so many.
Just out of curiosity, do the hospitals report shootings? I mean, not that it identifies who it is, but like how many gunshot wounds they treated or something?
Yeah, I think, but I don't know if that's an area that's outside my area. I know every time I've tried to get any medical information, they throw up the HIPAA that is basically a firewall to FOIA, and you can't. Our lawyers have said there's not much you can do. Now they like receiving, for instance, but that doesn't give you an accurate. You might be able to say, okay, Detroit hospitals handled this many gunshot wounds this year versus last year.
But some other communities might be rushing in there too, quite frankly.
Sure. Yeah, and that's where some of the discrepancy. I was going to say every year there's a handful. For instance, the justifiable homicides are not counted in the criminal. And few cities do that. I looked at the FBI manual. They said that for how to submit
it's determined to be self-defense or something?
Yeah, that's the prosecutor's determination. So the thinking is why include it in your crimes total when it's not a crime? It was a justifiable killing. Yeah. Now certainly if there was an armed robbery that necessitated a citizen pulling out his gun and shooting, then I guess you would count that armed robbery. And this is when it gets into there's two kinds of stats. And Bob, you probably know this much better than me because, to be honest, crime stats are not – there's so much noise in crime stats that
there's a lot of white noise in it. People don't really know what it means anyway.
And the FBI, again, there's a disclaimer right on. I think the only people who really care about crime stats are us reporters or editors, rather, and people trying to make political points one way or another. I mean, because there's so much – I think people sophisticated to law enforcement take crime stats with a huge grain of salt because, I mean, it's a very front end of the process in Detroit.
Everything's distorted one way or another.
It's like it's like the city is painting this picture, that, crime is down in the city of Detroit for the first time in 50 years. 50 years ago, we had 1.6 million residents in the city of Detroit. But then another thing is you're hearing from residents saying, how safe is my neighborhood? How safe is our city that we live in?
No matter how safe it is, if the incident happened to me,
because when we call the police, they don't show.
We have a number of callers here. Let's get some of them on. James, you're on with the panel and with Mr. Hunter. James?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you, Bob, and your guest that you have there on the line. And I want to say something that I think is very important for everybody to look at. It is very important that City Hall and the mayor that is playing their narration get completely exonerated out of office. Kicked out of office. Because the first task of government is public safety. Not economic development, but public safety. So when you misappropriate money that should be used for public safety and to pay those who are the guardians of it, you have misdone your job. And so I'm saying to the citizenry, it's time to get all of these guys out of office so that you can have the city that you really need to have.
James, I don't know. You're saying there's misappropriation of money. I don't think there's been any real determination of that.
Well, let me tell you something, Bob. You can look at the frame and the actual testimony on it is the actual things that are being seen, the buildings and everything else. Well, that's why you see the exodus.
But James, that's part of the process. The mayor presents a budget. The city council actually determines the budget, and they prioritize. They say, we think money should go into this, money should go into that. They're the ones that actually hold the key. If you think that there should be more money in law enforcement, public safety, whatever it is, it's the city council that you go to and say, I think, you shouldn't fund this, but you should fund law enforcement. I mean, there's a process to be followed for that.
Yeah, but what I said again is that the public safety is the number one item on any list of taking governance And so what happens is that the mayor and the city council members have to have that in mind, and the citizenry hold them to the fan.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. That's number one out of all things. And so I'm saying, as a person who is observing from the outside in, that needs to be rehauled and revamped, and the citizens need to gather themselves. That's why I always believe in recalls. Gather themselves and say no more of the mess. We're tired of being misused and abused, and the people are paying the price for this.
Well,
so it's time to finish
James,
this.
that's what elections are for, and I'm sure that you'll probably be at the forefront this next election.
I will
Thanks.
be there, believe me.
Thanks for calling in.
One thing, when we're talking about the crime stats and the response times that came to mind was I used to work for the Center for Urban Studies, and they've done some of the compiling of those statistics. And when I was reading their process, they mentioned that cases where it was more than a few hours of response time, they took those out of the statistics when they calculated the averages, arguing that these outliers are probably simply people who forgot to file their papers on time. Well, without knowing that and just assuming it, I think that's skewing the statistics toward a smaller response time. And then you have...
That's true, but like what George said, Scotty, after a point, you could spend a lot of staff time trying to massage the statistics, trying to find a better way to do it. And the problem is, does it really reflect what your officers are doing? That's the problem.
Yeah, and I'm saying what the details are what matters there. I mean, whether there's actually support for the idea that a given, delay in reporting was actually because it wasn't really a slow response time, but was simply a delay in reporting.
Okay,
that was one of the anomalies. The other, there was a bunch of those. It's just I'm talking about what gets put in the data portal, and the police explained to me that that's not what they use when they're looking at their internal stuff. So, I'll give you a real quick example of why there's so much noise in crime stats. I had a coworker who was poring over some crime stats, and he looked up and was like, "Oh my God, this is a great story. Downtown has more crime by far than any other neighborhood in Detroit." That goes against, and I said, well, you need to understand how things, if someone comes and keys your car out in Brightmoor or up in the red zone or busts your window
they don't
out,
report it.
You're not going to report that. Yeah, and if downtown, if somebody, brushes up against your car, chances are higher that those citizens are going to report that. So, I mean, at the very front end of it, you have, if they're not reporting it, then as far as response time, remember it was a big thing when the emergency manager took over and he did his report and said the response time was unacceptable, and then they said they changed it to where they said now we've gotten it down to such and such under the national average. I looked, coworkers have since looked. If you can tell me where to find, I've been doing this for 30 years. I kind of know how to find stuff online. If you can find a national average of police response times, please tell me where to find it, because I looked everywhere I could. And everyone's saying, well, we beat the average. Well, where's the average?
Yeah.
How to determine that? And
I presume the FBI doesn't announce the average when they announce their crime.
No. In fact, my coworker just had Christine Ferretti had a nice series recently on the Detroit fire, and we were looking for average fire response times. And I ended up having to go. We had to go with 500 cities of 500,000 or more, and I helped her out, and we kind of crunched numbers, and we did it manually to find out where Detroit ranked, because it's just very difficult to find. It's difficult to find that statistic, and I looked everywhere. So if anybody knows, let me know.
We have a number of callers here who want to get to you here, George. Nippa, you're on with Mr. Hunter and the panel. Nippa?
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air.
Hi. As far as the response time, someone was trying to break into my home, so I called 911, and they said they were going to send a scout car out. It took some time. The person that was trying to break into my home, they were very persistent, and I called back, and they told me someone canceled the call. And I said, how can someone cancel a call? It's not even from the same number. I didn't cancel the call. So they said, we'll send another scout car back out. Do you know when the scout car came out? This was a year and a half ago. A scout car came out the next morning. They came out the next morning. And as far as saying there's a lot of crime in Detroit and the residential area and downtown area, if someone brushed up against your car downtown, because of you have a different surrounding down there, they probably would react quicker than if someone called.
That's been the stereotype that downtown and midtown get a lot of police protection versus
downtown
community.
Exactly. The neighborhoods get neglected.
You go downtown Detroit. I mean, you more likely to find a police officer at a corner intersection or something of that nature. What's the likelihood of you going to find an officer patrolling through your neighborhood, or when you call 911, is they going to come out and show? We're not saying that we don't have good officers that's out there doing their job, but what we are saying is that we want the police department to provide accurate data on police response time. Don't over-report and don't under-report. I mean, to say that the police response time is down to 13 minutes and you got a woman being sexually assaulted at Parkview Place and it takes 28 minutes, then, we got a problem, on our hands. And Detroiters want to see faster police services.
Nippa, that's interesting. I don't know if the person breaking in your house was, you don't want to give anybody any ideas, that was smart enough to call to the precinct knowing that you would call and cancel the run. Wow, I mean, I have no way of knowing that, but that would be pretty clever on the criminal's part to have done that.
You can tell who's been the cop here for 20, 30 years.
Well, actually, when I was
I
calling
never thought of that, but you're absolutely right.
Right. Well, when I was calling the police, I was actually holding the door. Me and my son was actually holding the door because the person was so persistent. So I had to yell out to my other son. I had to tell him, we got to call the police again. That's unfortunate. And another thing is, it's unfortunate that we don't have enough police officers that live in the city of Detroit, because you tend to protect the city you live in more so than the city you don't live in. Because if you don't live in the city, you'll come do your job. You won't do your job as you really should, but it's just a job at that point. It's not to really protect the job, the city that you're living in.
Well, it's making sure that you're efficient about it. One of the problems we're seeing with police response times is, our police officers responding to the crimes that they need to be responding to in the order that they need to be responding to them. You mentioned the incident you had, right? Are we seeing officers who are not familiar with the neighborhoods and they're going and they're, thinking that they should focus on the guy who's just, he just hangs around the neighborhood. He just got no job.
Dispatch
right?
is going to tell you where to go. I mean, dispatch is supposed to prioritize what's going on in terms of where you're supposed to respond as a scout car or a police officer.
But if you look at the police response times for downtown, and then you look at the comparison to neighborhoods, whether it's the 6th precinct, the 5th precinct, or the 9th precinct, those numbers are not comparable, not even close. And then and then we talk about Project Greenlight, technology that we are using to combat crime. There's still, significant crime being committed at green light locations, and even look at some of those police response times at some of those various green light locations.
All right, we have some callers.
So I do have concerns.
Let's get through it. Thanks, Nippa. We appreciate calling. Have a great Sunday. Lester, you're on with Mr. Hunter in the panel.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
From my perspective, in terms of neighborhood security and preservation, it's really up to the neighborhood inhabitants. I've had experiences in the past with 9/11 when I used to be up in Flint, and it was always an abysmal response, if at all. And so we organized a neighborhood security team, and just our presence.
What neighborhood are you in, Lester?
Well, the neighborhood that I'm speaking of now, when I was up in Flint.
Oh, Flint. Okay.
Was in what they call the Mott.
Okay.
Mott
sure.
Cultural Center area.
Okay.
All right, and it's a pretty nice area. Mott Community College, Charles Stewart Mott, all that.
I've been there. It's very nice.
Okay, so a mile to the north is a very significant crime area, and so anyway, long story short, just by doing our own neighborhood patrolling nightly and daily, the incidence of all forms of problems just dried up.
Sure, Lester, the CB patrols and those type of things, I've seen them. Some of them are very active and they're very good.
But here's the point about this. Here's the point. CB patrols, I mean, it's not the end all to say all. It's not. They are not the police, and they are not trained to be the police. When you have a law enforcement agency like the Detroit Police Department out here, I want to see the police show up, to those different calls or those various runs. I don't want to see CB radio patrols out there because the thing about it, we also got to look at their safety as well, and we have law enforcement put in place for a reason. So I'm all for police officers out there doing their job, but these CB patrols, I mean, hey, you are taxpayer citizens and you pay for a service, so you want to see your officers show up whenever you have to make that call. And God forbid you have to make that call.
As part of a radio patrol myself, and former vice president of the one MEC patrol in my area, it is clear that we are supposed to be eyes and ears of the police, which means the police are still the responders.
But you are not the police.
Spotters.
Yeah.
Well, I think residents, when they call 911, they don't want to get a busy signal, number one. Number two, they don't want to be redirected to a non-emergency number. And once again, radio patrols are not the police. You do have a police that's in place, and I just love to see police response time improve.
We're getting near the end of the show here. Jerry, we can do this here in a minute or less? Go ahead, Jerry.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bob, and good morning to you and to your guests. Mr. Bob, to your guest, my question is, don't you think, gentlemen, the mini police station to be put here and there in the neighborhood, that could be a good solution to the quicker respond to the call of the citizen? I would love to hear your response, and thank you very much.
Jerry, it's always ideal to have many more substations and things like that in a location. It comes down to everything else. It's money. I mean, I hate to say that. I mean, it's finances. So do you staff it? I mean, you can staff it with non-police personnel, meaning, receptionists and things like that. But do you have police? Do you spend the money on the brick and mortar in the capital that's involved, or do you hire more officers?
If you allow me not to interrupt you, when it comes a matter of money, don't you think there is a lot of good police officers who they retired, they don't mind to have a volunteer job to help the community?
Well, volunteering, they still got to go through the certification to maintain being able to use a gun and everything else.
The auxiliary police, I mean.
I think we can do a little bit. I think we can do more with our police reservists and have them more so in the downtown and deploy more of our officers to the neighborhood so we can have more resources, more eyes. Yeah. But I don't think CB Radio Patrol is really the solution here, nor do I feel that, having our police more so downtown. I think we need to have reservist officers in the downtown offices.
Yeah, and having the sworn officers on the road.
And have sworn officers
we
on the road.
We appreciate your service, gentlemen, for the community and the citizens. And thank you, and God bless you.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. You have a great Sunday. Appreciate you calling in.
I do. Same to you, sir.
Okay, George, you working on anything hot? We got about a minute left here on the show.
What's cooking, George?
I have something pretty hot. One of the stories, I just got a FOIA back. I'll be writing about this. Is that the city is finally making money on police patrols downtown for Tiger games and Red Wing games, because they put that in the new thing. I got to tally the money up, but because it was costing $1 million a year, we were just giving it free to the Illiches. We were charging the Lions, we being the city charged the Lions $1 million a year to patrol their game, but just gave it to Mike Illich for Red Wing, and I wrote about that.
America, yeah.
Yeah, even when they were in Tiger Stadium, I wrote a story about that, 20 years ago, saying Detroit's one of the few cities in the country that doesn't charge for this. Well, for the first time last year, they finally recouped some money.
Oh, good. We appreciate it. George, I want to thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. You're back from vacation. You're fresh to go, and we're all set. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it very, very much. That was George Hunter from Detroit News.
Bob, do we got another hour? Because I got my coffee now.
Yeah, well, drink it in the car. I want to thank everybody for coming. Commissioner, especially for helping to set up the guests and what you've done. Tom,
yep,
for coming.
Thanks.
And Scotty for joining us as well. It's been a fun 2 hours, and I'm sure all of you will be back again in the near future. You're listening to 910 AM, the Superstation. My name is Robert Ficano, and we'll be joining you next week, 8 to 10.
On a Robert Ficano Show, everybody.
Even though we probably link up every now and then with minimal combo, look, it's really good to see you, friend. Something I realize that I don't even have to mention is whether or not you got me. That's something I never quit.
It's the best day party in town on 910 AM Superstation with Chuck Bennett. Weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m.
Hi, I'm Hunter Ellis, and this is Atomic Beam USA. Another bright idea from Bulbhead, the ultra-bright, tough-grade flashlight that features tactical technology used by U.S. Special Forces. This flashlight has a feeble 125 lux output. The Atomic Beam USA has up to 5,000 lux. That's 40 times more. We're going to drop it hundreds of feet from this helicopter. It hits the tarmac, and it's still working. That's what I call a tough flashlight. Heavy downpours, mud puddles, even extreme temperatures are no match. You could spend over $100